Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative, where we'll be looking at A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. It was published in 1979. It was then adapted to screen in 2005. As usual, I'll be looking at three things. I'll be looking at how good is the book, how good is the film, and how well does the film take from the book. Now, this one was actually one of my book club books. So that was interesting, and the book was actually lent to me by my friend Jo as well, who, if you remember rightly, earlier late last year, we actually did a guest star with herself, and that was A Monster Calls, which was a book to film adaptation. So let's start with the film. Now, the film was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't shit. It was just dull. Which really annoyed me, because you had Alan Rickman as a manic depressive robot. You had I've genuinely forgotten his name, the one that plays Bilbo Baggins. Oh dear me. Oh well, Martin Freeman, that's his name. You had him as Arthur. You know, you had a good cast, you had a good story, but it was just dull. I watched it years ago, and then I rewatched it for this episode, and I was genuinely just I kept looking at my phone. I kept playing a game or responding to a message or surfing the internet, because it just didn't capture my attention. It didn't keep my attention either. And I really hate when I do, it genuinely does annoy me. I'd rather just watch a film or watch a TV series without, the need to look somewhere else. And I knew I had to watch this film. It's the only reason why I managed to get through it a second time. As I said, it wasn't shit. It was just nothing happened. Even the action scenes just didn't feel like action, and there was a lot of I don't know. It was a 3 out of 10 film for me, to be perfectly honest. I will not be watching it again under any circumstances whatsoever. It's done. It's out of my memory. I'll try and purge it from it. And the book. So the book, it's only about 200 pages long, and yet it took me an extremely long time to read. I'm genuinely ashamed that it took me over a week to read this book, because honestly, I struggled with it. It's a good story. It had a good premise. I was genuinely obviously I'd watched the film before I'd read the book, so it was a case of that, but it had a good premise, and I was really looking forward to it. But it was okay, and I struggled, and sometimes the terminology, and sometimes I was just sat there going, why am I reading this? It picked up a little bit towards the end-ish, but for 200 pages, it shouldn't have taken me over a week to read. And honestly, sometimes I find that sci-fi books become too technical at points for no reason whatsoever. Yeah, we get it, they're in space, we don't need to know all the ins and outs. And whenever they're talking about the probability drive as well, I was just my eyes were glazing over, and I was I know I need to read this, but I'm struggling, man. But I felt like it just dragged in the narration. I felt with the characters, I wasn't invested with any of them. I was just sat there being I just want to one character. Just one character will be enough for me. And I don't know if other people in my book club felt the same. But I'm always reluctant to say that I didn't like a book. I always give it a go, and I always try my hardest to like it. But this will not be a reread for me. And thank you, Jo, for lending it to me, honestly, because I'm glad I didn't have to buy it myself, because if I'd have bought it myself, I'd have put it straight in secondhand. It's very rare that I do that, but the characters were okay. The plot didn't really make much sense at times. It was just a mediocre book with overly technical language at some points, and I struggled to read it. So overall, it gets a 3 out of 5 from me. I will not be reading it again. Now, what I will be doing is, because of the fact that I wasn't a huge fan of the film and I wasn't a huge fan of the book, I will not be doing a full book to film adaptation in regards to, I will not be discussing the plot in its entirety. But basically, I will just be giving you the basic outline. So essentially, you got Arthur Dent, who's the main human who rescues, what did he call himself? Ford, who's an alien. Ford realizes the Earth's going to be destroyed, rescues Arthur Dent, and then they hitchhike, end up with, I'm not even going to try and say his name, ends up with an old friend of Ford's. Arthur meets a girl that he liked on Earth that got whisked away by this guy, and they just go on this little adventure to find this planet. They find the planet. It's hard to describe because it just makes no sense. So Earth is destroyed. Arthur and Trillian or Trisha or whatever her name is, are like the last two humans, and then the mice are actually ruling the world. And yeah, it's overall the plot got a 7 out of 10 because it actually was quite close in narratives. I will give them that. They didn't have the chase by the Vogons, who are the like bureaucracy of outer space. And they didn't have the capture and rescue of Trish. But the rest of the plot points were pretty much the same, which I just can't be bothered to go into, to be perfectly honest, because it's just, there's no point me rehashing the whole plot because it didn't interest me. And I get really, as I said, like with films, you know, if I get bored in a film, I'll start I'll stop playing around on my phone or doing something on my phone, and I'll stop looking at the film. So, but you know, I don't feel like I'm wasting time. But when you're reading a book and you're not enjoying the book, and I know that I've got to continue it, I get upset because I really, really, really want to like a book and I give it as much hope as I can. But this one just didn't get me, and I will not be reading it again. But you know, you always get that. There's always a chance that with the amount of books that I read, there's always a chance that there'll be a couple that I'm not a huge fan of. And with the amount of films and stuff that I watch as well, again, it's not a huge one I'll be a fan of. You know, when we do book club, you'll get a book that you'll read and be like, I probably won't read it again. But that's the whole point of the book club. So in actuality, if there is anybody in Leeds that does want to become part of the book club, just drop me a message or a comment on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. You can find me The Contented Narrative, and then I can add you to our book club, because we are sort of like, we're trying to grow, basically we're trying to grow numbers. If there's any books, film adaptations you want me to have a look at, if there's any book reviews you want me to have a look at, just drop it below in the comments and I'll add it to my ever-growing list. I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you guys for the continued support. Thank you so much. And remember to always keep it contento.